to come on with me and to talk about all the things that we do. We are 2 weeks out, or a little bit more or so, from the election and from all the who knows what's going to happen. Certainly, there seems to be a lot of tension and uncertainty, and people are freaking out one way or the other. But um, I'm hoping that everything will be kind of chill and that we can just go into it, be done with it, and not have to be exposed to all these ads attacking each other and one another. Whoever decided that that was the way that political campaigns should be, as far as stoking the fire of candidacy, it's ridiculous why it has to be, as far as all the negative connotations and individuals attacking one another. But that seems to be the modus of operandi and the strategy which all parties agree to. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Comment on what we're about to head into, and then I did look at. I've not seen the show Utopia, but I read some information about it, and it certainly looks intriguing, especially considering what we're contending with as a world.
Well, comment on, yes, the next coming weeks. I'm certainly getting lots of emails. I'll look forward to not getting any more. Lots of flyers in my mail. I even, I have a flyer that I don't put on people's cars or anything like that, but I try to talk to people and hand them one if they'll take it, or put it out at different places. And I went to the post office where I go regularly because I hold gold and silver raffles, so I'm often shipping gold and silver to people.
Right
and
on.
so they know me, and so I said, can I put these flyers out? And they said, there's no way you could put your flyers out. I said, well, can we just stuff them in everybody's P.O. box like I get in mine with all the nominee stuff and local and presidential? But they laughed and they were like, yeah, right. But
Right.
if only. As far as Utopia, I'm not going to certainly give everybody the research rundown that I would love to do if I was going to make my own video on this only one season show so far. But it is very telling of a lot of things, but yet not. And I'm sure you kind of understand about how there's 99 truths to sell one big lie.
Oh yeah.
Recently, they came out with a show trying to expose Facebook, but they still pretend it, was created by college students, or they certainly don't tell you that it was related to LifeLog, DARPA's program called LifeLog, or anything like that. So it's an interesting show, but the reason I wanted to talk about it was because it's kind of telling with Trump's recent catching of the virus allegedly and being healed in 3 days. What do you think? I would like to hear what you think about what you've seen with him catching the virus and then being healed in 3 days.
Well, it certainly is intriguing that all of the people that are supposed to be in leadership role get it, and how convenient at such a time as going into a month away from supposedly the election, which I believe is more like a selection process. But there's never, as far as a coincidence, and so there has to be something more to it. But I did hear, it's funny because here in the household, the girls that work for me, some of them either hate Trump or love Trump, and I don't care one way or the other because I'm not involved in the whole controlled opposition thing. But it's looking at the like a outside perspective, looking in on how everybody is deeply moved and influenced to either hate or love him. There's no middle ground. But one person did tell me that she believed that Trump had contracted it purposely in order to receive sympathy votes. And I was like, well, how's that going to benefit him when he's been opposed to, wearing masks and doing all these things? And uh, so, there's so much out there as far as conspiracy theories and things that are being related on, depending on which party you support, what platform. There's all kind of craziness. But yourself, what do you think?
It is interesting that it was 3 days. If you look at Strong's dictionary, and I have what I use is eSword,
Mm-hmm.
the word wound, they have three different uses for that word in Revelations 13:12, but in Revelations 13:14 it only is one, and it's plague or plague, and it's G4127. If anyone thinks I'm making this up, they can certainly look it up themselves, especially if you have eSword. All you have to do is type in the word wound, and you can do the KJV plus, and it gives you all the Strong's numbers, and you can match it and see. Like so, for instance, when it's used in 13:12, it's got three different versions in Greek, and then the plague is one of them. And then on Revelation 13:14, it says a stroke, by implication, a wound, figuratively a calamity, a plague. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not one to say that Donald Trump is the Antichrist, but I believe that you believe the same thing, that there is more than one Antichrist. There's
Mm-hmm.
been more than one. And is he playing the part of one, or is he setting us up for one? I don't know. I don't know if you knew about that word, though, wound. I didn't know that until
Mm-hmm.
just a couple weeks ago.
No, I did not. But, again, my personal belief is that he is bloodline elite and that the bloodline elite are certainly part of the New World Order beast system, which I know I'm going to get probably a lot of hate mail because there are seemingly so many Christians out there that do love and support him and believe that, he's going to right the wrong and turn things around and drain the swamp and all that. And there's all these indictments that are whenever going to be, all these people taken into custody, and that all these people that have been above the law and running rampant and involved in pedophilia, that they're all going to be rounded up. And I pray, yeah, that happens. But certainly I'm not going to buy into it or accept it until it happens. I don't know about, everything with regard to what Q has been up to or what they've been saying, but I know a lot of people, buy into the hype and believe it and support it, and think that, he's God's gift to this particular dilemma and situation that America finds itself in. Whether he did assume control of the Federal Reserve and take it away from the elitist families that had once run it, I don't know. But, for America's sake, I hope there's some truth to that. And but, again, the whole controlled opposition, the left, the right, the Democratic, Republican, I don't support either side. I believe that they're both corrupt and they're both owned by and are part of synagogue of Satan. And that's kind of my stance and where I've been, no matter who is put out there as the face or the puppet on a string. Um, it's every year during the electoral election process, the selection process, we've been basically given two members of the same family, the same bloodline elites that have been and are still now sitting on the thrones of the world today. And if you don't believe me, or if you think I'm, full of it or whatever, look it up for yourself. It's not a big secret. that Trump is part of that bloodline and that he is cousins with the Clintons and other elitist families. And so, you know, I pray that things do turn around for America, even though we're like in so much debt now that even 100% of the GDP, there's no way we're going to ever get ourselves out of this debt. We're never going to be able to turn things around. It's just a matter of time before things collapse and are forced to change. And so, but again, I hope for the best, pray for positive. I don't want to see anybody suffer. I certainly don't want to see our nation and our country affected negatively or adversely in any way. I pray for all of humanity, and I want nothing but, uh, peace, love, joy, good, healthy environment for kids to be raised up and nourished. And I certainly don't want to see anybody suffer out there. But the reality of the situation is that, and this is even reported by the emergency workers, that rather than contending with real emergency situations where people's lives are at risk or are threatened in some manner, that the firefighters and paramedics and even police officers, they're contending with suicides and people that have overdosed and that need Narcan. And, that is a sign of how much things have degraded with regard to, the situation on the street. So I'll turn it over to you with that.
The thing about Q is they love to follow the white rabbit, and that's really interesting since the white rabbit never actually leads Alice anywhere good, but to the other side of things and gets her into trouble constantly when it comes to Alice in Wonderland or Beyond the Looking Glass. And if you think about it, a looking glass is probably a scrying mirror in a lot of ways, and the scrying mirror is very demonic in witchcraft. If anyone's not familiar, I made a whole video, which I cleverly, thank you Jesus, of course, titled "Who's Scrying Now?" But talking about talking about the black mirror of the phones and the TVs, and that they're trying to put these. They're not trying. They have put these organic carbon-based layers in the new iPhones and the new Samsungs and in the new TVs, and it's called OLED, OLED, organic LED. And if you didn't have demons and creatures coming through your electronics before, well, boy, it's going to be so much easier when there's a carbon-based organic layer for them to plant themselves.
Insane.
And so I think if you've got the iPhone 7 or older, I don't believe it's in there. I knew at one point when I made the video, but of course, by all means, go to my channel, watch the video. It's called Who's Scrying Now. You can do a search on my page of YouTube. But in this Utopia, so this Utopia is a show on Amazon Prime. I really don't recommend everybody watch it because there's disturbing imagery, is graphic stuff that maybe a lot of you guys understand and are okay with, but I think we always have to pray the full armor before we just walk into something. So I'm not recommending that people watch it. What I am going to do is tell you that I did watch it, and I want to watch it again because, of course, the first time I watch anything, I try to just, if you can believe it, enjoy what I'm watching, because I don't think we should stop trying to enjoy. If we had to protect ourselves from everything that's secular, it would be really difficult. I mean, we really wouldn't be able to listen to much music anymore. We wouldn't be able to enjoy a movie anymore. And it is kind of hard because I can point out so much symbolism in movies and music now that it is actually really hard for me to listen to and watch secular things. But what it can also be fun for me and interesting when it's really a show definitely trying to point that stuff out. And this show is just full of blatant imagery and definitely symbolism. But the only reason I'll give you an overview is because, again, I I wouldn't want to bore you to death with details, right? You're not going to want to sit here and listen to me pick it apart. But it's about a comic book called Utopia, and the comic book is found and is supposed to be a sequel to a comic book called Dystopia. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that there's been any show called Dystopia, or perhaps this is a real comic book. I think it is based on a real graphic novel called Dystopia, and then the show goes off of called Utopia, which is supposed to be a sequel. And of course, as we know, what Utopia is promised is not what it will really be. Utopia is promised peace, freedom, world peace, and that we'll all be able to paint or golf all day and get income, that, universal basic income, and it'll be wonderful. We get to have all this freedom and laziness, but there's no purpose in that life. And what's very interesting in this show is the purpose of these people, these characters, is so incredibly important. It is the probably main line of the show. If you were to say, what is this show about? The specificity of people's purposes. Well, not people in a loving way of your purpose or my purpose and God's purpose for us, but created, made in a laboratory type of purpose for these people that, of course, are raised as children. When I say comic book, the comic book is supposed to be very popular. Everybody wants to see it because we're comic book fans. And so they're trying to sell it, get a lot of money. But what it really is it's a key to something that's going on in the real world. And the character in it, who was a little girl, who happens to have the name Jessica Hyde, Hyde, but also could be like Jessica Hyde, Hide. The interesting thing is, she was created. She was tested on. There's lots of MK Ultra kids in cages. They were all created with this special purpose. And she apparently gets away, leaves her special purpose, and somebody's trying to either send her a message with this new comic, or they're trying to send a message to the world. But what it really gets into is a lot of truth about what they do to children with MK Ultra. It gets into a lot of truth about twins and what they love to have twins for. And now they're not going to get as graphic as Mangala, right? They're not going to tell us. You're not going to have a TV show on Amazon that gets into the kinds of things that Mangala did, but it's very truth-telling. I think would go over most people's heads. I think they would watch this and be like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, you can use twins because if you don't need one, you can use the other, or you can kill one off. And the really interesting part is it gets into, and this is where I think we'll have a good conversation about lots of things, but they get into a flu. There's a man-made flu that is spread on purpose. And you've got a Bill Gates type figure, and then you've got a physician that really wants to save the world. And the physician that wants to save the world is led to believe that this is the flu that he knows how to treat. He's got a vaccine for it. And so they prop him up and say, hooray, he's treated this flu, which they're giving to children on purpose. It's for the greater good. And I'm sure you've heard that before, the quote unquote greater good. And there's been even joke movies made about it, but it's very true that that's what they think they're doing. And what they're really doing is they're spreading a flu that he can't cure. It's a different flu, but they pretend that he's cured somebody because, lo and behold, there's a twin. And so they actually give the one twin the virus that they can't cure. She dies, and the other twin pretends to be revived from it. So there's this whole fake, oh, we've got the cure, we've got the vaccine, and people are begging for it. People aren't just demanding it. They're begging for it. And they say that in the show. And this is what I've been telling people. I made, if people are not subscribed to me, I made a video, several videos starting way back. But if you just were to go to the one that's called the Black Gold Ascension, I actually tell you which videos I would request you go back and watch, because they actually build up to how I got to where I am when it comes to these vaccines and the fact that people will be begging for them. But there was one I made at one point called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I called it that because I went back to some of that old movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I went back to The Blob and several other films, Venom, that talk about this black goo and this programmable matter that could be what's going to be in a vaccine. And how could they? And I sat with my mom one day, Zen, and I said to her, I looked at her, I said, what? My mom's a nurse, and I was in the medical field for 10 years, PA and EMT, and I said, what would make people beg for a vaccine? What do you think? And she was like, she named off a few things. I said, what if it could cure cancer? What if it could cure everything? And that's when it clicked for me. I mean, I know I'm not new. I'm not the first one to think these things, but that's when it clicked for me. What would make people beg for a vaccine? And this show totally explains it, because they're killing thousands of children. Well, I mean, allegedly it's a flu outbreak, but they're sending out rabbits, of all things, to petting zoos where all the children are going to get it. Rabbits, always about the rabbit. But you've got this Bill Gates character that wants to push this vaccine. You've got this doctor that is, of course, the good guy, quote unquote. And as soon as they admit faking genetic problems, they admit that, this disease is, we called that a genetic. We told people that was genetic. We got to know that's true, right? We know that. Why can't I think? When you get what the kids get with vaccines, where's my brain?
Well, the autism and
autism, yes.
Yeah.
They've tried to say that that's genetic. I think they've tried to say some of these autoimmune diseases are genetic, and I don't believe that they are. I think an autoimmune disease definitely comes from a vaccine. And so anyway, ultimately, in this show, they're trying to find and chase down and find a Mr. Rabbit who's behind all of this, who's behind all the MK Ultra of the children. Of course, we know it's the Bill Gates type character. And what's odd is that, and the virus, it was a British show before it was an American-made show. And in the British show, of course, they named the virus Janus, which could, January with the Greek and Roman god comparison. But in the show, it was a sterilization vaccine to sterilize. But I think you and I know it's going to be much more sinister. It's going to be something more than just sterilizing humanity to lessen the population. It will cause more death, more cancer, or even possibly have programmable matter that will actually be the final thing that takes our soul from any ability of salvation. Anyway, to say all that, I know we can go back and forth. I wanted to mention that Trump has partnered up with his Operation Warp Speed to get all these vaccines out there with an ex-executive of GlaxoSmithKline, who is behind vaccines that have definitely hurt children severely. And that's who he's now partnered up with. And he's pushing this company called Regeneron that's been behind, I think their sole purpose is to make vaccines. And Michael Pence, during his debate, said, we will have 10 million vaccines by the end of the year. So anyway, with all that, now we've got a quick summary of the show. And now we can get back to real world topic of vaccines and flu.
With that, let me share something that I just saw on Yahoo, and it's about the COVID-19. It says, experts, COVID-19 herd immunity strategy could lead to overwhelming death and devastation. And this was just put out today at 2:34 p.m. And so this will be something perfect to lead into what we'll talk about. And it's a short article, so I'll just read it in whole. It says, senior Trump administration officials have reportedly endorsed a reopening strategy that hinges on exposing young, healthy people to COVID-19 in order to protect those at highest risk, the New York Times writes. The plan is aimed at achieving herd immunity, defined by the Mayo Clinic as when a large portion of a community, the herd, becomes immune to a disease, making the spread of disease from person to person unlikely. Herd immunity is typically only reached through vaccination, and experts say attempting to attain it without a vaccine in the midst of a pandemic where as many as 95% of Americans aren't immune could be disastrous. 2 to 6 million deaths is a perfectly reasonable back of the envelope calculation, Dr. William Schaffner, an infectious disease expert at the Vanderbilt University, tells Yahoo Life. Yeah, perfectly acceptable as long as you're not one of them, right? When asked about the potential loss of life that could occur from a herd immunity strategy, a spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services directed Yahoo Life to a series of tweets from its secretary, Alex Azar. In them, Azar mentions a meeting with Trump's newest coronavirus advisor, Dr. Scott Atlas, as well as some of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, a petition created by a subset of scientists who believes herd immunity is the best solution. But this group of scientists who did not reply to Yahoo Life's request for comment are decidedly in the minority. Schaffner, a 50-year-plus veteran of epidemiology, says taking their approach to herd immunity would be playing with fire. Quote, if we leave it to the virus itself, we have to recognize that in many parts of the United States at present, less than 5% of the people have been infected, he says. That means the virus would have to infect a vastly larger number of people to actually achieve herd immunity, at the price of huge amounts of social disruption, sickness, hospitalizations, and obviously deaths, end quote. This level of illness, he says, could lead to a catastrophic loss of life. Quote, the price would be enormous, says Schaffner. You would be rivaling the 1918 colossal influenza pandemic. An estimated 50 million people worldwide died from that pandemic, including close to 700,000 people in the U.S. alone. Experts believe that roughly 25% of the U.S. population was infected with the virus at the time, leading to a 12-year drop in the average life expectancy rate. Dr. Dara Koss, Yahoo's Life medical contributor, believes there are many reasons why herd immunity could be a deadly disaster, not least of them that young, healthy people are not immune from severe illness. There is a risk of every person getting infected passing away, Cass says. It may be smaller for young people than older people, but this is not a riskless infection. Just a couple more paragraphs. She notes that other countries, such as New Zealand, have been able to reopen by taking more serious precautions to prevent COVID-19, like enacting rigorous contact tracing programs. Meanwhile, the approach of Sweden, which set out to achieve herd immunity, has been labeled a disaster and a failure, resulting in one of the highest per capita death rates in the world. Cass suggests that this example is even more reason to avoid it. Quote, there is no objective evidence that this would work. None, she says. What these people are advocating for is a hypothetical that could result in overwhelming death and devastation with no backing from any public health. To employ this strategy, she says, would not only put young people at risk, but force older and more vulnerable people to have to endure even more isolation, all seemingly in an effort to reopen the country more quickly. They're basing this on a hypothetical that makes their lives easier, says Cass. It's lazy. Schaffner agrees that those who buy into it are missing the point. There are always people, and I think more this time because of the political overtones, who are dubious about the epidemic, who don't really understand how it's spread, and who, if they are not personally affected, don't care very much, he says. We have a core of conspiracy theorists in the United States that seem to be with us. So it's not really surprising. What is surprising is that there are people supporting it who seem to have some scientific background. I find it stunning. This is the last paragraph. Although some may continue to argue that herd immunity has been achieved with other infections such as the measles, Schaffner says proponents of that theory are misguided. They forget the price. Before we had a measles vaccine, 500 children died each year in the United States of measles and its complications. He says, that's the price of herd immunity. Nature is fierce. It's not benign. Then it goes on to give some statistics, but basically you see, even though the death rate, the true death rate, is less than 1%, like a portion of 1%, they still want to vaccinate everybody. They want to forcefully be able to inject everybody in order to, you know, protect the least vulnerable or those that are truly at risk. It's just insane. But again, it's big money for the vaccine manufacturers and the companies that would put out all of these vaccines at a, without even proper testing, or not that they would ever do that kind of proper testing, because they're never going to be safe. The whole point of vaccines, in my opinion, is to spread disease and to harm. I mean, the whole theme of the Georgia Guidestones is to reduce the size of population to a manageable size, so that they could have a second class citizen, as a servant class of individuals that could be controlled by them. And so it's no great secret, in my opinion, what their true motive is, and they're going to try to take advantage of all of the fear that they've hyped up around this coronavirus, in my opinion.
Well, that's it. It really, first of all, very interesting what they said about Sweden, because it seems like Sweden's been doing fine. I think
Right.
that they're completely lying about that. And they also, in South Dakota, did not ever lock down. Yeah, they did change some things where they they didn't mandate masks, but they said, let's try to abide by the 6-foot rule and things like that. But they never locked anything down. Everything stayed open in South Dakota, and they're some of the lowest numbers. So if they're saying that's the case, I mean, it's so easy for them to lie that they can say whatever they want, and people will believe it. And like you said, they're going to the survival rate is great. It's much more than the influenza, and yet they've got to have this vaccine immediately. And that's what I think Trump is pushing, this Regeneron company, and he's got GlaxoSmithKline executive guy on at the head of his Operation Warp Speed. It's all about money. And I wish that the Q people could see. They just go back to that 2012 video where he was anti-vaccine in 2012, maybe once or twice in 2016. But he's so not anti-vaccine. In fact, at one of his rallies, he's like, "Oh, you're going to love me because I'm going to have the vaccine." And now it's like, "Yeah, we love you for the vaccine. Right. Yes, we love you for martial law. Yes, we love you for these things." What people don't remember, or ever did, maybe they never did know, is that it was Obama that put into the effect of putting civilians under trial at a military tribunal, where they could go to a military prison and no one would ever know. And it's for some reason, Q people think that's a great thing. They want to see military tribunals, and it's okay with them if they've been private. It's okay that maybe McCain went under military tribunal, and that's how he really died. And yet that could happen. Really, what that's created for was for us to be able to get basically taken in for anything, have a private military tribunal for even us, and to have to go to military prison, and no one would ever have to tell anyone where we went.
Right.
And as far as the vaccines, of course, they're meant to either program, like you said, I agree with programmable matter, to program us and make us lockstep and or kill us. Either way, they're happy with it.
Right. Yeah, and the whole theme of the I wrote several articles in a book that I put out a long time ago called "Awaken to the New World Order," and it was called "The Torture King and Loss of Habeas Corpus," and it was all beginning with, at that time, George Bush, before Obama supported the whole agenda, and then now Trump and every president thereafter. But even going back to before, this is to Daddy Bush and the Declaration for the New World Order, that they have been trying to implement what became the Patriot Act, that was written and was ready to be implemented before the events of 9/11 ever happened. I mean, you have this, 200-page law or whatever it was, just being forcefully uh, passed by senators and representatives, and they never even had a chance to read the bill. And now the legacy of that is that we do have this alternative military tribunal system where even Americans, if declared domestic terrorists, can be uh, indefinitely detained, can be tortured and sent off to black sites and not even be told. Extraordinary rendition, um, all of that is in play. And they have this whole other judicial system because they didn't want to compete with habeas corpus and the constitutional rights. So they just created an alternative system that they can just put you through this, and there are no habeas corpus rights. You don't have a right for a speedy trial, or to not be indefinitely detained, or even to be tortured to extract a confession or have evidence um, brought before you, and that could be kept secret as national security concern, and your family, uh, whoever's interested in your case or your legal rights or citizens' rights or protections, none of that exists in this alternative world that they've created, where they could basically do anything that they want. And there are already many American citizens that have been forced through this system. Um, and, like they would love to get their hands on Edward Snowden and others that have blown the whistle and that have shown what the government's up to. They hate whistleblowers, and they want to make an example out of them so that no American and no government employee, no matter the circumstance, ever tells the American public the truth of what's really going on and how the government has been spying on and utilizing, um, the whole thing of what went down on 9/11, the extension, the Patriot Act, the war on and of terror that Cheney said would not end in our lifetimes. These kind of things are targeting American citizens, patriots, Christians. We are the target, and that's what people don't realize. They had the whole thing of that show 24, where they showed how terrorists were tortured, and there was no outcry. There was no, and in fact, people were cheering it on. Like,
Yep.
yeah, let's waterboard them terrorists. And even worse than that. I mean, if you read the things that were taking place uh, to Muslims that were detained under extraordinary rendition and that were tortured, the kind of things that happened in like Abu Ghraib and other places, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrific. I mean, they expose people to sound, sleep deprivation, starvation. They even put people in, casket-like conditions where they're not able to move, and then they put like spiders and things of that nature in there just to freak people out. I mean, the psychological torture of what they were doing, as well as the waterboarding, because feel like you're drowning and not being able to breathe. That certainly will mess you up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I mean, the kind of things that were done in the name of fighting terrorism. And again, the American people are the true targets. And that's what people don't realize. And so um, being brainwashed and not understanding the true consequences of what they are not speaking out against, and it clandestinely supporting because of, there being no outrage over what our government was doing. Those things are in place now, and we'll never turn around. And these kind of things, which when we come back from the break, I'll share something that, if I can find it, that was written in 1984 that spoke about this exact thing, how they would turn good and evil and political correctness upside down to where they would have the public screaming for these kind of measures, and so that they could be protected uh, from the so-called boogeymen. But let me turn it back over to you.
Well, that speaks exactly to what I was saying about the vaccine. What would get people to beg for something like that? Not just want it, but beg for it. And I also think there'll come a time where they're also trying to make it cool and hip, not maybe just the vaccine, but what it will become to be the programmable matter. I think you and I both agree that this particular vaccine probably won't be the mark yet. I think they're still trying to make it what they want it to be. But they're making all these music videos and movies where it's super sexy to have like these special powers, or to have
Right.
black cubes around and pyramids and black and red and white and gold. And if I assume everybody's familiar, and I shouldn't do that, but the black, the white, and the red and the gold are the ascension in the Hermetic alchemy ideal of the Luciferian duality mindset, that black is with your eyes are closed, white is when your eyes are open, red is your acceptance, and gold is you've made it, you've ascended. And so those colors are extremely important to Luciferians. I'm not so sure if it goes across to Satanists too, because I do know there is a difference, but I think what we see more of is this new age duality of a Luciferian type of system that's kind of controlling everything than the straight up. I think they're both there. I think there are straight up Satanists that definitely love to carry out murderous rituals, and I think there's Luciferians who think they're good guys. They might even preach about Jesus a little bit, and what part he has played in the process of their ascension. But the outcome is the same for us, and so they don't. They want a lower population on both sides, whether it's Satanists or whether it's Luciferians. They want to lower the population, and part of the ritual for the Satanists would be to kill us, and part of it for the Luciferians is their ascension, and that the rest of us don't get to be. But anyway, like I was saying, when I talked about Venom cured cancer in the character of that comic. And when the character agrees to let Venom be in his body as a symbiote, it cures his cancer and he gets superpowers. And Spider-Man gets bit by a spider and gets superpowers. And there's so many of these characters that they make it something that people will want, not just because it will heal them, but it will give them even more powers than they had before. And they very well may have those powers, but they're not going to be who they were. And I think it's going to take completely away their sense of morality. It'll change who they are. It will be the actual mark. There will just be no more of you in there. It'll finally be that defeat of your God-made DNA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly these kinds of movies are certainly pushing forth and sharing with us exactly what it is that they are trying to do, what they are trying to achieve, and how they are wanting to achieve it. That was the whole reason why the Sacred Word revealed the End Time Mysteries conference. We did take the trip to the Georgia Guidestones, because a lot of people are not familiar with the Guidestones or the message on them, and how the elites have declared openly what they want to achieve, how they want to achieve it. And again, they're not trying to hide anything. They're telling you plain as day, hidden in plain sight, that they consider you a useless eater and unworthy of life, and they've made and determined um, the the fate and destiny of the collective that they want to purge, and they want to get rid of a large part of the population, and they're doing these kind of things under the whole pretext that the earth is incapable of taking care of all these numbers of individuals when it's completely untrue. Scarcity and starvation and all these kind of things are man-made, and that abundance, God made the world to abundantly care for and take care of not only us but all the creatures, and there is no problem with the earth being able to provide. And it's just that, again, the Illuminists, the Satan, the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid, they want to perpetuate an ideology that in order to support a green movement, that humanity has to be penalized, has to be punished, and has to be dealt with, and that we are the threat, and that we have to be decimated and controlled in order for the earth to survive. That somehow, we are threatening its existence and its ability to continue in the natural order and normal harmony that God established it with, which is all, again, just a load of bull. But this is what so many people are buying into. And now we see the whole theme of the carbon tax and the United Nations and these other international organizations pushing this ideology. Even the Black Lives Matter and these different socialists and communist organizations and groups, even these young movements, the young people that are being led, the Sunrise Group and all that, they are embracing and teaching these ideologies, and they have the people buying into it. These young radical leaders buying into it, and they believe it's perfectly acceptable to uh, to create chaos and to fund destruction and to create destruction, riots and murders and arson and things of that nature in order to attack humanity, which again is the enemy of the world, and that the youth have to rise up in order to save us. Otherwise, there's going to be nothing left, and that we see that playing out on the streets of America and around the world, all over the world, that the people are buying into this mindset and accepting it as the purpose and the reason for them doing what they are doing, and it's they're completely being brainwashed and led astray into criminality, in my opinion.
That is a perfect segue into, I wanted to respond to a comment by Kevin Johnson, who says the whole world, this would have to happen the whole world wide, this change with the DNA, or else people would see it. And it's already happening. People are already blind to what's going on around us. It doesn't have to happen the whole world wide for people to see it. They would just be blinded by it. Like, you just tell them, oh, that's not really happening. Or, yeah, that's happening, but don't worry about it. It's a good thing. Oh, okay, great. It wouldn't happen. You wouldn't have to change everyone's DNA over the whole world for it to work, because we're already 95% of people are asleep at the wheel. We're a very small group of people who want to know the truth. Very, very, very small. When I go out into the real world, when I tell somebody COVID-19 was fake, it was made up, Googled Event 201, they look at me like I'm a nut job. That not gonna. I did do that yesterday. I did go out physically with a little piece of paper, and I handed it up to people. And I was also trying to talk to people about gold and silver. And then if they didn't want to hear about gold and silver, I tell them about COVID-19. That is fake. And I said, Google this. But what if you ever saw the movie Stepford Wives? Yeah, people might go, there's something weird going on here. If you recall, Stepford Wives, this was like a great feminist movie for the 70s where this wife who had everything taken care of for her by her husband just wasn't happy enough, moves her into this nice neighborhood, and she thinks the women are off because they enjoy cooking and cleaning and servicing their husbands. And I don't mean servicing sexually, I just mean serving them, like servicing with food.
Yeah.
Anyway,
taking care of families.
Yeah. And yet somehow she's like the person that you like, and she totally neglects her son. She treats her husband like crap because he, even though he's the one that works and bought her the house. But it's a feminist movie because in the end you find out that the Stepford wives are all robots. Anyway, the point is she knew something was up, but she had to do some digging to find out, and it didn't change anything. She wasn't going to change that neighborhood. She wasn't going to get them to stop using robots. In fact, she was going to be the one pushed out because she wasn't doing what everybody wanted to do. She couldn't understand how women could be happy loving their husbands and doing good things for them. So anyway, the point is yes, there'll be people that will say, well, I see what's going on here, and that will be the very few. And what will we be? We'll either be the remnant, or there'll be non-believers out there not sure what to do. My hope is we can bring as many souls to Jesus and create a remnant and protection with the Lord Jesus, and that while we may not survive the tribulation, we are very aware how to avoid the mark and not fall into that. In fact, I wanted to bring up Jude 1:17. There's only one chapter, but it's a call to persevere. And if you don't mind, since we're so close to the break, I'll just read it. It's just a few verses.
Yeah,
I'll read from 17 down.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes.
That'll be plenty of time. So in Jude 1:17, it says, "But beloved, remember ye the words which were spoken before of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ, how that they told you there would be mockers in the last time, who should walk after their own ungodly lusts. These be they who separate themselves sensual, having not the Spirit. But ye, beloved, building yourselves up on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Ghost, keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life, and of some have compassion, making a difference, and others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment spotted by the flesh." And it's so important because we have to persevere and build ourselves up, and remember that we have to have compassion even for the mask wearers or the people that want to look at us like we're crazy because we said COVID-19 is fake or whatever it is we're saying, because we yet may pull some out of the fire and create a better remnant and protect the remnant as well from falling into the mark.
Awesome. Well, we got just a minute remaining, and when we return, I did find that the whole kind of quote from 1984 that I'll share, and it will set up the second hour perfectly for what we'll go into. And I don't know if you have other articles that you want to bring up, but certainly I'll defer to you after that. We'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. but there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity, but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen-Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
What I'm going to be reading from is Dialogue in 1984. It's an excerpt which was focused on biblical cosmology, and there is a portion of it that is quite eye-opening and revealing with regard to that, but it's more matter-of-fact with regard to what we are talking about as the alternative military tribunal system and how the the political elites would set up where instead of being innocent until proven guilty, you're basically now guilty until proven innocent. And so it's very important about the top hats, said Winston patiently. The point is, these capitalists, they and a few lawyers and priests and so forth who lived on them were the lords of the earth. Everything existed for their benefit. You, the ordinary people, the workers, were their slaves. They could do what they liked with you. They could ship you off to Canada like cattle. They could sleep with your daughters if they chose. The heresy of heresies was common sense. And what was terrifying was not that they would kill you for thinking otherwise, but that they might be right. For after all, How do we know that 2 and 2 make 4? Or that the force of gravity works? Or that the past is unchangeable? If both the past and the external world exist only in the mind, and if the mind itself is controllable, what then? By making him suffer, obedience is not enough. Unless he is suffering, how can you be sure that he is obeying your will and not his own? Power is in inflicting pain and humiliation. Power is in tearing minds to pieces and putting them together again into new shapes of your own choosing. Do you begin to see then what kind of world we are creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid hedonistic utopias that the old reformers imagined. A world of fear and treachery and torment, a world of trampling and being trampled upon, a world which will grow not less but more merciless as it refines itself. Progress in our world will be progress towards more pain. Alone, free, the human being is always defeated. It must be so because every human being is doomed to die, which is the greatest of all failures. But if he can complete utter submission, if he can escape from his identity, if he can merge himself in the party so that he is the party, then he is all powerful and immortal. The second thing for you to realize is that power is power over human beings, over the body, but above all over the mind. Power over matter, external reality, as you would call it, is not important. Already our control over matter is absolute. But how can you control matter? He burst out. You don't even control the climate or the law of gravity. And there are diseases, pain, and death. O'Brien silenced him by a movement of his hand. We control matter because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull. You will learn by degrees, Winston. There's nothing that we could not do. Invisibility, levitation, anything. I could float off this floor like a soap bubble if I wished to. I do not wish to because the party does not wish it. You must get rid of those 19th century ideas about the laws of nature. We make the laws of nature. But you do not. You're not even masters of this planet. What about Eurasia and Eastasia? You've not conquered them yet. Unimportant. We shall conquer them when it suits us. And if we did not, what difference would it make? We can shut them out of existence. Oceania is the world, but the world itself is only a speck of dust, and man is tiny, helpless. How long has he been in existence? For millions of years? The earth was uninhabited. Nonsense. The earth is as old as we are, no older. How could it be older? Nothing exists except through human consciousness. But the rocks are full of bones of extinct animals, mammoths and mastodons and enormous reptiles, which lived here long before man was ever heard of. Have you ever seen those bones, Winston? Of course not. 19th century biologists invented them. Before man, there was nothing. After man, if he could come to an end, there would be nothing. Outside man, there is nothing. But the whole universe is outside of us. Look at the stars. Some of them are 1 million light years away. They are out of our reach forever. What are the stars? Said O'Brien indifferently. They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go around it. For certain purposes, of course, that is not true. When we navigate the ocean or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the earth goes round the sun and that the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it is beyond us to create a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant, according as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten about doublethink? The old civilizations claimed that they were founded on love or justice. Ours is founded upon hatred. In our world, there will be no emotions except for fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else we shall destroy. Everything. Already, we are breaking down the habits of thought which has survived from before the revolution. We have cut the links between child and parent, and between man, and between man and woman. No one dares trust a wife or a child or a friend any longer. But in the future, there will be no wives and no friends. Children will be taken from their mothers at birth as one takes eggs from a hen. The earthly paradise had been discredited at exactly the moment that it was realizable. Every new political theory, by whatever name it called itself, led back to the hierarchy and regimentation, and in the general hardening of outlook that set in round about 1930. Practices which had long been abandoned, in some cases for hundreds of years, imprisonment without trial, the use of war prisoners as slaves, public executions, tortures to extract confessions, the use of hostages, and the deportation of whole populations, not only became common again, but were tolerated and even defended by people who consider themselves enlightened and progressive. And remember that it is forever. The face will always be there to be stamped upon. The heretic, the enemy of society, will always be there so that he can be defeated and humiliated over and over again. Everything you have undergone since you have been in our hands, all that will continue, and worse. The espionage, the betrayals, the arrests, the tortures, the executions, the disappearances, they will never cease. It will be a world of terror as much as a world of triumph. The more the party is powerful, the less it will be tolerant. The weaker the opposition, the tighter the despotism. That's Orwell's 1984, and you can see how those things that have been stated within this particular novel are true to light and prophetic, and that this is exactly what we are contending with and dealing with as world right now. Erin?
I will push back on the prophetic part, but only because you recommended the book, The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship.
Mm-mm.
And they talk about how these writers wrote these things on purpose.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
not that they were prophets in any way, like, the prophets of the Bible.
Right. It was. I guess it was prophetic because it spoke to a future, but that they knew was coming. That they, that they planned to come, and they wanted to stick it in your head, and that very much sounded like there was so much in there. But I was thinking, and my response, how they're performing MK Ultra type traumatizing mind control on us, just by not just in movies and books and things, but 9/11. That was very traumatizing, and that was very easy to implement. It just overnight made it easy to implement, like what you said, how 1984 talked about the espionage and the Patriot Act type of scenario, that it just overnight. And then now we look at coronavirus, and overnight it's easy to put muzzles on us and implement AI technology much, much faster. And if you listen to any of the guys that follow technology, they're saying that too. They're saying stuff is happening overnight that was normally just going to take a long time.
Right.
And yet it's pushing them to get these driverless cars going. It's pushing them to get these robots to deliver our packages. It's pushing them to get us all out of the job and have a universal basic income, which I brought up at the beginning when we were talking about what utopia is said to look like. But like this show called Utopia is going to be absolute utter disaster for all of us, and you either fall in line or you get pushed out. And it talked about controlling matter in that book, in the part of the book you just read. Controlling matter started with the mind, but now it's going to be the soul, because it's going to be controllable, programmable matter, whether it's in a vaccine or a chip. It's going to be a third strand DNA, is my belief. And I did drop the link to the Black Gold Ascension video that I made after several videos of research and trying to uncover and understand programmable matter and how it would work. And it would make sense that it would be another strand of DNA that would just basically, it doesn't need to be CRISPR. I think the CRISPR editing stuff is just just for lack of better terms, building block, but it's a building block of the step of an entirely new DNA. So where it's mentioned in 1984 that he could control matter, that's because it started with the mind. I think it will now be the soul. He talked about levitation. I've mentioned that I believe that the third strand will be laid down with what is called orm gold, which is monoatomically changed gold to where it floats like hydrogen or helium. And that would be a way to, if you could put that in the body, to levitate, which I think is part of their, one of the special, I guess, the superhuman features that you could have. And he talks about children being taken from parents, which is exactly what Brave New World talks about. And the Huxley family is very interesting. Aldous Huxley happened to be the author of the story, but several Huxleys were very much into scientific experimentation and very much part of the scientific community, whereas he was the science fiction writer. But I think he was just writing what he saw and knew what was coming as well. And one other thing, boy, I have to try to be able to read my own handwriting.
You're good.
No emotions. In the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, one of the things about the aliens was that they didn't hate or love. And they were trying to say, but that's how it will be for you too, and you should want that. And yet we were not created that way from the Lord Jesus Christ. We were created emotionally, and we have to control those emotions, but we certainly are meant to have them. And very important for our livelihood and our partnership and our community to have emotions. If I can't get angry about something, Jesus got angry about things. Then where do I have righteousness if I can't say that's wrong, or even just say get upset that it's wrong? If I can't see that it's wrong, if I can't emotionally feel that frustration, that God-given understanding that that is wrong and I'm going to do something about it and stand up to it. And yet we're seeing so many people not do that right now. So many people. I am the only person in a store right now that does not wear a mask. I will not wear a mask in the grocery store, anywhere. You can go into a restaurant. Everybody has a mask on when they come in. Everybody has a mask on when they go to the bathroom. And nobody's mandated it. And I don't get kicked out when I don't wear one. I don't even get dirty looks that I know of, because I think I kind of have a look on my face that scares people already, sadly. Honestly, like I won what's called, what did they call it? They called it resting fitness face when at the gym, because I won this little award called resting fitness face. So maybe it's just the look on my face that keeps people from bothering me. But I've talked to store people and clerks and everything like that, and they seem to agree with me, and they're very nice, and they've never harassed me about it. But I know that not every town is the same. However, it's kind of like one of those things is, okay, I either can go in and shop or I can't. Or do I send in somebody else who's willing to wear the mask? Or do I wear the mask? I understand there's a lot of questions. It has to be your own choice. I'm not saying if you wear a mask that you kowtow to the entire system. This is a stepwise process, but we have to be careful, because if we start falling into some of these behaviors, and especially if we make it normal for our children, that is something I will not do. I will not put masks on my children, and I will not allow forehead scans on my children. Where is it when we finally push back? Where is it when we finally say, okay, enough? And I think that's why 1984 called it, is they've MK Ultra'd us, they've monarch mind controlled us with trauma after trauma after trauma, and they're doing it with the vaccines, they're doing it with the movies, they're doing it with things like 9/11, and he's right. Now they may take over with the control of our soul, but look around you and see how mind controlled we really are. Just like when I said I tried to go around and talk to people yesterday, I had a woman literally ignore me as I stood next to her and tried to talk to her. Acted like a complete robot, pretended I wasn't even there. And I wasn't even saying anything. I wasn't saying anything mean. I was asking her if she was interested in gold and silver. And when she ignored me about that, I said, did you know COVID-19 was fake? You should Google Event 201. She got very stone-faced and looked angry. And I went on to ask her if she was going to vote Democrat. And then I did kind of harass her a little bit. But the point is when do we address it out loud? When do we stop being a silent majority? I don't know that we will, Zen.
Yeah, it's again, it's unfortunate that people are so fearful that they're willing to toe the line without doing any research into the actualities of the situation that we're all contending with. They believe the hype, and then the whole theme of what Goebbels, as the propaganda minister for the Nazi Party, he said, you repeat a lie often enough and it becomes the truth.
That's right.
And the bigger the lie, the more, and the more you repeat it, the more that people will accept it. And certainly that is the case. And these are techniques which they perfected even going all the way back to the 40s. And so, the time that they've had since to implement and to perfect the technique of lying and leading astray a public and getting them to buy into that you're trying to help them or to do what's best for their health and situation. I mean, all of that has been playing out. And certainly they talk about the need to control media as the propaganda arm of the so-called party or the order, as far as the New World Order. And so these kind of things are perfected to the T. And that's why it's so unfortunate that, you have the majority of people buying into and accepting these things as truth. And, the whole thing of what this article that we read from earlier today that talked about the need to vaccinate everybody in order to protect a small percentage of the population. That unfortunately, the majority will buy into that as well. And they're going to get in line to get their vaccines, and they're going to believe that government is there to help them and to protect them and to protect their lives and that of their children. And they're going to put they're going to put themselves at risk, that of their family members, their loved ones, and all people everywhere. And it's unfortunate that so few really know what's up, and we're the crazy ones. We're the ones that sounding the alarm and warning them and trying to give them the truth. We are the ones to be made look foolish and to be attacked and ridiculed and to be called the conspiracy theorists when the conspiracy is absolutely real. There's no theory to it. And anybody that does any amount of true investigation can come to the same conclusion. But again, so many won't, just because they're afraid to be part of that group that is, basically pointed to and ridiculed and called in, those that are insane. And just that fear is enough to control so many people, to keep them from looking at or examining truth. And they'll never come to realization. And, that's why the scriptures tell us, my people are killed for lack of knowledge, and why God warns us so much. But, again, most people are just not awake, aware, and never will be. And they'll go to their graves believing the lie and supporting the enemy to decimate even themselves and that of their children, their family members, their parents. They'll take the poisons, they'll ingest them, they'll inject them, they'll eat them, they'll drink them. It's just crazy that this is the world we're living in. This is what we are contending with in this day and age.
And that brings us back to, well, it doesn't have to bring us, but brings my mind back to Q, which somebody happened to also mention in the chat. I think the way Q is able to get people, just to let everyone know, in the beginning, I found Q because I was researching what was going on and had kind of uncovered the satanic practices before I found Q. And then I found Q and I was really excited. And I was really excited for Trump and Q, and I was believing all those things. And I'm grateful to the Lord that I pray for wisdom, truth, and discernment every night before in my nighttime prayer, because it became clear to me not very long after. It didn't take too long. It became clear to me that more of the people that were covering Q were questionable, and then Q became questionable. But where Q gets people is Q will quote a scripture, and only one scripture, and it's the armor of God. It's Ephesians 10 through 20, or maybe it's just 12 through 20, or just a few of the verses in that part about the armor. And Q will say, pray, keep praying. And then Q actually wrote out recently a prayer, and I think said Jesus. And I think where people really are mistaken, and Zen, you can tell me if you agree, that well, first let me say that he also gets people their heartstrings on children. Satan knows that our heartstrings are really pulled for children, and when people find out, and I think a lot of Q people do believe what is going on with the children. When they find out, they become zealots. They become rabid dogs for the movement, because they need to believe that these children will be saved. But recently,
yes,
with this prayer with Q, is that he said Jesus, and people were telling me, because I was like, come on, guys, because I still push back, and people are saying, but he said Jesus, and Satan can't say the name Jesus. Since when can Satan not say the name Jesus? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how? Maybe demons can't, but since when can Satan not? In fact, if you ask me, it was Jesus who was walking through the garden looking for Adam and Eve. I think whatever the belief system is here. I don't want to upset anybody in the chat who's like, no, we all believe it's this way. But anyway, Jesus was there in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we're talking about the same person here, basically, so to speak. So how can Satan, if Satan can talk to God about Job, how can he not speak Jesus's name? And they're so fooled. Well, if he wrote a poem, or if he wrote a prayer speaking Jesus's name, then Q is definitely good. But do you know how many New Agers love Q because they see the New Age mentality behind it? You don't even convince them. They absolutely adore it because they see it. They're like, oh, the Ascended Masters and Q is all coming together. Or like, what's her name? Oh, she's got that Ramtha spirit that she's been speaking to, and she was on TV decades ago about her Ramtha spirit that she channels, and she's a Q pusher. And then you get these big channels that are not getting taken off of YouTube that are making lots of money pushing Q. So when we see that, we had to question what is really going on here. And I know that a lot of people in your chat don't love Q or oops, I accidentally hid somebody's comment. Jason L, that was an accident. Your comments are totally appropriate. That was a mistake, and I apologize. I just got clicky there. Anyway, I think most people here are not Q followers, but I still try to warn in case there is anybody that there's nothing about Q quoting scripture or saying a prayer that says that Q is a Christian mindset and a godly thing. And definitely, again, it points to the children, which will get anybody up in arms and anybody like, I have to save the children. Q has to be saving the children. And so they'll accept anything, like you said. They'll poison their children, their own children, because Q's saving the planet. And, and now that Trump's pro-vaccine, yes, we'll take the medication. Thanks, Trump. And yes, we love martial law. And yes, let's have military tribunals. And it's very sad and very scary. And they accuse me of being asleep. They say, oh, if only you knew what was really going on. But that's what we have to deal with. We deal with it as Christians too. Oh, if only you idiot Christians. You're so dumb. You just believe this mythological story. And so we have to continue to persevere, like it said in the book of Jude. But anyway, back to you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I do believe that our listeners here are very hip to the whole false left-right paradigm. And it's something that I've been speaking about and covering and sharing from the elite's own words and the things that they have said, and the whole occult technology of power, and that's covered in great detail in that particular manuscript. And so I do believe that a lot of the people that do follow our work do realize that the controlled left-right paradigm is controlled opposition, and that it really, to not get caught up in that agenda and to waste your energy in supporting one or other side of basically the same. It's the synagogue of Satan, no matter if it's Democrat or Republican. They're both controlled. That's a dog and pony show. And so why would you support one or the other evil? One being greater or lesser in your mind, when really it's the same thing. And so, I think a lot of people are waking up to that. And that's really what we need. We need more and more people to wake up to that and to not get caught up, because, again, here at my house, I watch a lot of the girls that work for me. They either love Trump or they hate him, but they get so caught up, and they're like, yelling at the TV. If like I'll watch the news just to get an idea on the weather, and then they'll get all caught up in the political whatever, the campaigns or whatever it's being spoken about, this or that. And also I do watch some of the mainstream just to get an idea as to what they are feeding the masses and what they are trying to do as far as grooming them and leading them in mindset. And I do believe that, of course, not all watchmen or watchwomen, that it's necessary. But I do think that for a lot of people that are sounding the trumpet and are trying to make people aware of what we are contending with, that it's important for us to at least have a pulse on the situation as is being pushed by the propaganda arm of the mainstream media in supporting the New World Order and the coming reign of the Antichrist, this whole beast system that is coming to power. Because certainly if you do watch and you are seeing as far as Hollywood, news, and also the movies, the miniseries, things of that nature, you without a doubt can see the whole, like the premise of the strong delusion, that the extraterrestrials, the ancient aliens, are our creators, and the whole theme of evolution, the missing link, and that the extraterrestrials that jumped a gun on evolution. The reason we've not been able to find this missing link is because, there was no slow process of the evolution. It was because the aliens stepped in and intervened, and that's how we just quickly and rapidly developed. And I mean, it's insane, but yet this is the mindset that everybody is being groomed to accept. And those people that were brought up and brainwashed and indoctrinated by the educational system, boy, they're just ready to bend the knee, to accept them as their gods, and to take the mark if necessary. Boy, they are ready to get in line for the vaccines as much as they will be for whatever the mark, the AI technology, whatever that, all those things that come into play. It reminds me of that movie Independence Day, when the extraterrestrials came, and then all of them got on top of these huge high-rise buildings, and they're all holding these signs, "Welcome, Space Brothers," and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, there's this beam of laser or whatever that extends from the bottom of the ship and just destroys the building and disintegrates it. And it's just, again, it's just insane.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like people who are holding Black Lives Matter signs, or their
Right.
business says Black Lives Matter and is getting destroyed, and then they're
Right,
confused.
exactly. Getting burned down, yeah.
And then they're
Exactly.
confused. And I saw a guy even out in his yard, and he was yelling at these people that were having a huge, I wouldn't say rally. I mean, they were storming a neighborhood, basically, Antifa and Black Lives Matter.
Right. Uh-huh.
And this man's yelling. He goes, "You have no idea how many of us are Democrats." And I wanted to, if I was there, of course I wouldn't be, but I suppose I would have been to the guy. They don't care. It's not what
Right.
this is about. They actually don't care if you are falling into line or not. All they're doing is making enemies on purpose. It's a paid, non-organic, government-run organization. And when I say government, like, maybe they don't think they're government-run, but they are. Wherever they're getting their funding, whoever's militarizing them, it's government-funded. And they don't care if you actually agree with them or not. Their job is to go out and sow massive, massive discord. And really what you're also seeing is you're seeing people on the right be silenced, and after they stick up for themselves and protect themselves, like Kyle Rittenhouse. When I say silence, he's being charged with first-degree murder for people who attacked him, and then he shot to protect himself, and they died. And he was a good shot. I mean, bless the kid. He was a great shot. And he took two out, and the other one he blew off his arm, and the guy who he blew off his arm was holding a gun in that hand. I mean, amazing shot. But that
Wow.
he's getting charged with first-degree murder, while there's Antifa going to Trump rallies and murdering them and getting, they have actual funds and lawyers trying to put these people out, get these people out on bail. It's incredibly terrifying that, and so, people are going to maybe they're going to have some grace for me and understand this. I live in an area where I want people to know that I'm on the right side, and I support the right, even though I understand the Hegelian dialectic. I think we have a better chance with these people on the right than just voting straight in leftists who want to murder babies outright and make that totally legal. So I'm like, if you are going to vote, I put some banners in my yard for the Republicans, for the local, and I do have a Trump flag. And the reason I do that is because I want people to see that my position is not nearly on the left, but I have had people drive by my house and scream at my house, and then they turn around and they drive by and they scream again. I followed them the last time, interestingly, and I kind of recorded, and I found out you can find out a lot of information about a person with just their license plate number, but not trying to advocate that people terrorize anybody that's even trying to terrorize them. But it's just become so divisive that even I have to say, is it right for me to even I might have to start silencing where I stand. Maybe I need to start taking the banners down. And like I said, it's for local government too. I mean, most people don't even know who's running for local government. And yet I've got people driving by my house screaming and calling me a racist. So and now I'm having to say, do I want to stand out to that extent anymore as a single mom with 2 kids? I do pray protection over my house every day, but what we're seeing more and more is, let's say I had an incident that I had to protect myself, which I do have a firearm. And if I came out and protected myself, will I go to prison and be charged with first-degree murder while these people get bailed out on a regular basis? And this is where we're seeing the change happen. Not only is the lie being believed, but we're being completely silenced, not just on social media, but they'll just put us in jail, and it's allowed now because we didn't show up for our local elections. People were put in that are pushing agendas locally that we have no control over anymore.
Yeah, these are crazy times, aren't they? And then, again, with regard to the Black Lives Matter, and then the Civil War, these are all things that were written into the protocols like hundreds of years ago, and even prior to that of like 1984. And they speak about the economic crisis and how all the everything will be brought to a standstill and people will lose their jobs, and that there will be this depression, and then foreclosures and people struggling just to even be able to pay their bills. And now we are in the reality of it. And then those that are that don't have work and employment, that are restless, especially the youth, those that are part of the Antifa movements and that are being paid by certain groups to be part of those that go out and rape, pillage, and plunder, that there is this armed antagonist being these people that are being paid and funded by some of these elitist groups, and they want them to go out and cause chaos and to stir up trouble. And the movement, as far as the youth, they're restless. They don't have hope. They don't know what to do with their time. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're wayward and led astray, and they are joining again these communist groups and the agenda for destruction, and they don't care. They will murder their neighbors, those that are innocent. They're just doing a job in bringing on the destruction. They don't realize that they're being used by the New World Order to bring in the order out of the chaos. And this is what we see again, and it's nothing new. And I don't know whether there's going to be any further. I know a lot of people believe the dreams of the pastor from Kentucky, Dana Coverfield, or whatever his name is.
Oh, that's crazy that you brought him up with only 20 minutes to go.
Well, at least there is 20 minutes to cover. But a lot of people, believe that this month, next month, and those couple months after the elections are going to be really insane. But what is extremely weird, and my son brought this up with one of his latest videos, is that he was wearing an Israeli Mossad T-shirt or something of that nature. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not of that particular one, but I know enough about him that I would hope that nobody is following that man at
Yeah,
all.
I'm not. I'm certainly
I
not
know you're not.
buying
I
into
just
it, but
mean I certainly just want to speak to anyone listening that will be listening later that there's a lot of good reasons not to. But yes, anyway, go on about the Mossad Israeli shirt.
yeah, and so even he seems to be controlled opposition in some manner, in that, a lot of people were sending me his videos and that believe him to be truthful. We even had a speaker at our conference that talked about in great detail the numbers of the visions that he supposedly has had, and the things that you know he says are going to happen in in regard to the election and the upcoming chaos, and how so many people went out and purchased food for the first time, as far as emergency supplies or this or that. Um, and then again, who knows if this guy is even real, and if what he is saying is relevant. But I personally believe that we should be perpetually ready, and that emergency, just to have emergency food and batteries, a solar power radio, or whatever, firearms to protect yourself and your family. That these kind of things are just, in my mind, common sense precautions that people should take. And just like with the whole lesson of Hurricane Katrina, when certainly FEMA wasn't there to take care of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and after those hurricanes and after the levees were blown, and then the streets flooded, and the shipments were unable to get into the city for over a week. A lot of people starved just because they didn't have any food. And then those that didn't, they took to the streets to try to take what they could from other people, other business owners or whatever. And so that was a lesson for all of us, that first, you can't rely on government, or that your local grocery store is going to be stocked in case of an emergency situation, but that you have to already have provision in place. Should anything, I mean, you never know when it's going to be a moment of emergency, and so we should always be perpetually ready. And I think those people that have a mindset, again, the doomsday preppers are made fun of, but I think they are very wise in seeking to take precaution and to protect themselves and their family members from any eventuality. So turn it over to you again.
So, yeah, I actually, when I think about, and I was praying about this really close to before we went live, I was like, Lord, what am I going to talk about tonight with Zen? I know you'll give me something, right? And I'm like, what is it going to be? And it was getting really close. And I'm like, I've got like 2 hours. So what am I going to talk about? And I thought about Dana Coverstone. So I'm kind of glad we're bringing it up just for this. He doesn't deserve a lot of our time, but I'm glad you brought it up, because he's already gotten a contract. I mean, do you have okay, maybe you have a contract, I don't know, but I don't have a contract with sponsors and stuff, but you've been on YouTube for a long time. I've only been on YouTube for 3 years.
No,
and
I don't have any contract.
Yeah, right. Okay. And he's been on YouTube only since January. So what do you, I mean, how can a guy get on YouTube and then he starts to go viral? Then he, some of the things he's been saying were going to happen, it's already passed. He said they were going to start happening in August, September. They haven't happened.
Right.
I'm not going to point out specific things because I don't have it written down in front of me, and I don't watch I just had the worst feeling about him when I was sent videos by him. And it's been a bit of a, sore spot in my Discord too, because we have a few people that really were believing in what he was saying. And since it's my server, I had to finally say, I'm really going to put my foot down on this, and we're not going to talk about Dana Coverstone anymore in here. Because what you said, we should always be ready. The Bible says you don't know, like a thief in the night. When you think about the Galilean wedding, it was up to the father when it was going to happen. And the bridesmaids had to be ready. The bride had to be ready. The son had to be ready. They didn't know when it was going to happen. They always had to be ready. And the father would at some point decide, and he'd wake everybody up, and they would go and they would have the wedding. Just so it is with Jesus and his second coming. We're not supposed to just sit and do nothing waiting for that. We're not supposed to be afraid. We're not supposed to go, well, if the world's ending in September, then I guess I better really get ready. What I had to realize is I had that feeling too when I first started learning the truth. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to get everything together overnight. Oh my gosh, didn't know about this for so long. And then I had to tell myself, and the Lord told me, Erin, you have time. And I pray for time still. I say, Lord, give me time to teach my children these things too. But if not, let us rejoice knowing that we're going to have eternity with the Lord. But give us time if I could have it. And I knew I didn't have to freak out and start planning things overnight. So when it comes to Dana Coverstone, he's scaring people. He's got now a contract where he's getting paid. He's getting security. Very interesting what's going on with just him. And while at first I thought it was just my personal belief system that was being attacked. Why I didn't like him, because I didn't like what he had to say. I'm like, it's scary. But then I started to realize he's not just scary. He's scaring everybody. And where's the hope and the truth and Jesus coming from a pastor? And then he would say things like, I don't want to do this. I don't consider myself a prophet. But then he'll say his dreams are prophetic. And so he immediately contradicts himself. And then he argues they've got this Bible, or what do they call it? They've got this prophecy club or something. I mean, they call it, it's so cheesy. They call themselves like the prophecy club. And then they argue, is it going to be a meteor or is it going to be a suitcase explosion? One of those suitcase bombs. And it's like, okay, well, it's curious that we have people who are supposedly prophets in our time that can't agree on their prophecy. And you've got people like people are asking about Kim Clement. I'll speak on that too really quickly. I don't know what to say about Kim Clement because he's no longer alive. I can only look at kind of some of the things he said. And I think people would just totally blow him off if they weren't thinking that Trump was a savior. If people were not going, Trump is a savior. If Trump hadn't become president, very few people would care who Kim Clement was or anything that he said. But you've got people like Mark Taylor that continue to carry on Kim Clement's prophesying in the way that Kim Clement did, and he's making a bundle. He's getting, lots of views. He's getting lots of patrons. And I have some crazy dreams then. If I went live on my dreams, they are out of this world. They're so vivid. I can feel things. I can hear things. I can touch them and feel them. They're hot or they're cold. I have a very much emotional feelings in my dreams. They're extremely vivid. They're definitely in color. And I remember them so well that sometimes I can't get back to sleep when I wake up at 4 a.m. because that dream was just so crazy real. And I could probably make a lot of money if I went on and told everybody my dreams. I mean, I had a dream about bombs falling, and then the Pope came out of the wall of a building I was hiding in. The Pope, John Paul, comes out mysteriously through the wall and he says, "Be not afraid." I could have talked about that dream, and maybe people would have been, oh, wow, she's got these dreams too. And everybody listened to Erin-Moffett because the Pope told her not to be afraid. That dream was 20 years ago because I was reading the book about Pope John Paul II and found his life interesting of what, I don't know if it was the truth or not now, but back then I believed it. So if I were to go on and talk about my dreams and share the similarities to everybody else's dreams and plug into that, I could probably get a lot of views and a lot of likes and a lot of shares. But that's why my channel doesn't really grow, because I want to bring it back to the truth of Jesus Christ. And I even know the Lord told me at one point, when I say told me, my relationship is, he puts it very heavily on my heart that my channel wouldn't grow like that, because if it did, I'd get greedy. And so my channel isn't supposed to grow. I'm not supposed to be making a bunch of money from it. And I'm so grateful that I finally came to a point where I don't really look at how many views a video gets anymore. I'm not begging for patrons. I'm not, I just get on like you. We just get on and we talk and we do what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to spread the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ. And there's some other things that come with it because we're truthers. But it always comes back to Jesus. And Jesus didn't want us making money in his name. Jesus didn't want us lying to people in his name. He just wanted us to know him first and then to love our neighbors and to bring them the truth as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not, and certainly that's not my focus. Numbers and sponsors and contracts and all that. I mean, I'm even amazed that people, even listen to me. And I appreciate the support that people have shared with me over the years. But, I'm just trying to share the truth. And I think that others that are also truth seekers recognize that, and that here we have a platform to fellowship around the truth and around the gospel and around the truth that salvation is and does come through Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the light. And so first and foremost, seek ye the kingdom. All the other things will take care of themselves. And that's the way I live my life on the Ezekiel 33, the parable of the watchmen, that we should sound the trumpet, that their blood not be upon us. All of that I take very serious. And I think, that really I live my life by those decrees that are revealed within the Word. And certainly I am a servant of the Most High God and the Triune Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I dedicate my every aspect of my being to being a foot washer to humanity and the example that Christ delivered unto us. And so, yeah, it's not about numbers, not about money, not about any of that for me. I'm just trying to share the truth and trying to do that with individuals like yourself that also, I believe, are part of those that are awakened, that can see and understand, that have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a mind to understand, whereas most of the world is, asleep and caught up in deception and led astray, involved in idolatry and things of that nature. Revelation 12, that ancient dragon who deceiveth the whole world. That's what we're contending with. One more minute, Erin.
Well, I guess I'll take the last minute to say, yeah, I'm so grateful that you are doing what you're doing, because I've not only gotten to get to know your channel, gotten to understand your understanding of Jesus. That's helped solidify my understanding of Jesus, you, and among others. I've gotten to get to know you personally and to even come on your channel, not because you're a celebrity that I'm trying to become popular with, but because I respect your knowledge and I respect your research, and I look up to you, and I look up to Gary Wayne and people that I've now gotten to personally get to know. And there was a time where I watched these people having these interviews with people like you or Gary Wayne or any number of really intellectual people out there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to know what they know. I just want to know that stuff. And the Lord has brought that knowledge to me, not just in my own research, but by getting to know you and other people like you. And I'm extremely grateful for that. The Lord is so good. And while there's times of stress and I'm in a little bit of a valley, so if anybody thinks of it, you can pray for me. Nothing big. Just one of those, like, I just want this season to be over with the election and everything. But yet the Lord is so good, and my days are more good than not. And I'm so grateful for your knowledge, and that he used you, and that he uses me, and that he's brought us together to use each other. And I hope really help and change some lives for his namesake, for his glory.
Amen. That's what it's all about. And there was somebody asking in the chat room if I'll be on later with Rob, but it is not tonight. He'll be on my show tomorrow on Secrets Revealed on TFR, 9 to 11 p.m. So you can join us there for the Genesis Revisited study. I appreciate you, Erin. God bless all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.